Good morning, everyone. We're going to give just a minute or two just to allow any latecomers to join us here on this webinar. So we'll start in just a few moments. Okay, I think we'll get started, and those that join us late will be able to join us in progress. My name's Brian Lockery. I'm with the South Orange County Economic Coalition, and I wanted to thank everybody for joining us today for this webinar and informational session on the South Orange County Multimodal Transportation Study presented to us by the Orange County Transportation Authority. For everyone's information and knowledge, we are recording this webinar. So if anybody misses any portion of it, or if you have friends or family that you think might be interested in it, we are going to be posting this online, we being the South Orange County Economic Coalition. So we'll get it posted up on our social media channels and look to get it up on our website as well. So today, this is going to be a program on the South Orange County stakeholder virtual meeting where we're going to be talking about the future of transportation with OCTA. It is going to be an interactive meeting. OCTA is going to give a short presentation, and then we're going to take questions from the audience. And Jared, who is with OCTA, is going to be providing you a little more direction on how to do that. But we do have a raised hand feature if you'd like to have your question asked verbally, or we have a Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and a chat function as well. So if you have a question, you can use the Q&A function, type your question in, and the appropriate person at OCTA will ask the question for everyone's so everyone can hear it, and then answer the question as well. So I'd like to introduce our speakers and our presenters for today's meeting. Our two presenters are going to be Marissa Espino, who's our Principal Community Relations Specialist with the Orange County Transportation Authority. Marissa's worked in the External Affairs Division at OCTA since 2005 and manages all public outreach efforts for OCTA's environmental programs and multiple transportation planning studies. Her passion for serving and educating the public has led her to the public relations field, where she has remained for 20 years, primarily focused on community outreach and stakeholder relations. Marissa earned a BA in communications with an emphasis in journalism from Cal State Fullerton. Go Titans. Warren Whitaker has joined the OCTA Planning Division back in 2019. He has over 25 years experience as a transportation planner, spanning positions in private consulting, regional planning, and local government. Warren is passionate about stakeholder collaboration in the planning and development of sustainable transportation solutions that reflect both community and environmental stewardship values. Warren earned his Master's of City and Regional Planning from the University of Northern California at Chapel Hill after completing a degree in Environmental Analysis and Design from UCI. So with that, I will turn it over to Marissa and Warren, and they can take it from here.
Great, thank you, Brian. I didn't hear the Go Heels or Go Eaters, but for any UCI alumni, and I doubt there's any University of North Carolina alumni out there, but if there are, Go Heels. I know it's weird combination, but oh yeah, I think that started after I left. I don't know if they were doing that back in the mid 90s, but anyhow, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to provide the kind of an overview of the South Orange County Multimodal Transportation Study, or SOCMITS. and more importantly, an opportunity to hear from you this morning. As Brian indicated, I'm Warren Whitaker. I'm the study project manager, and I'm here with Marissa Espino, who's the study outreach project manager. And I see a couple of familiar names on the attendee list, but to help us especially know who's on the call here today or on the meeting, the Zoom meeting, if you would be so kind as to type your name and tell us what community or business you represent, that'll kind of help us understand and get a flavor of who all is here today. And with that said, again, I want to say it's great to have all you here today, and thank you for participating. We really value your input and the input from your community. It's critical to the success of this effort. Again, as Brian indicated, the presentation is fairly short, so we should have ample opportunity for discussion. If you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to add it to the Q&A. And I did see a item that looks like it was already answered in there. I saw it pop up. If you have any technical questions, including finding the raise your hand feature, please go ahead and use the Q&A. Our goal here is to have this be a conversation, and we really look forward to hearing your thoughts and questions. And we'll have opportunities throughout the meeting to get your input, including participating in interactive exercises, as Brian indicated. Jared, would you go to slide 2, please? Okay, thanks. Here's today's agenda. As I noted before, we're here today to hear from you. Hopefully you're hearing a theme right there. And again, I wanted to thank you for your time today and encourage continued engagement on this study as we look for ways to improve the way South Orange County moves well into the future. And with that said, I'm going to jump straight into the kind of more formal part of the presentation. So slide 3, please. But before I get into the specifics of the study itself, I wanted to provide some additional context. Last year, an agreement was reached by OCTA, the Transportation Coordinating Agencies, and Caltrans to conclude the process of studying toll road option extensions in South Orange County and instead advance 3 near-term projects. Specifically, the non-tolled extension of Los Patronos Parkway, and that's shown in blue, widening of Ortega Highway, which is shown in green, and the southern extension of carpool lanes on Interstate 5 from Avenida Pico to the San Diego County border, and that's shown in purple. Beyond these 3 near-term projects, longer-term solutions were deferred to this study, that is SOCMITS. Slide 4, please. Studies like SOCMITS provided long-term vision for the transportation system. This study will develop a vision that looks out to the year 2045 and beyond by engaging with stakeholders, analyzing transportation issues and opportunities, and ultimately identifying the locally preferred strategy. Once the locally preferred strategy is approved by the OCTA board, study recommendations can be considered in OCTA's long-range transportation plan and SCAG's regional transportation plan. Projects can then be added to the Federal Transportation Improvement Program to fund project-level studies and ultimately implementation. Slide 5, please. As illustrated, the study area is generally south of State Route 55 to the San Diego County line. This is the same area that was studied back in 2008 as part of the South Orange County Major Investment Study. Most of the recommendations from that 2008 study have been implemented or are underway, including the completed addition of carpool lanes on I-5 between San Juan Capistrano and San Clemente, and then the current construction project that is adding lanes to I-5 between State Route 73 and El Toro Road. Other notable changes since 2008 include downscaled growth projections for both population and employment, a decline in transit ridership, the introduction of transportation network companies, OC Flex, and OC Go funded community-based transit circulators, as well as widespread use of navigation and traffic apps. More recently, public health directives in response to the COVID-19 pandemic have impacted travel, economic activity, and transit service, but the long-term impacts may not be known for some time. We also need to consider requirements to analyze greenhouse gas emissions and vehicle miles traveled, as well as emerging technologies like autonomous vehicles. Slide 6, please. The study is being completed in 3 phases. The first phase was completed last calendar year, which resulted in documenting transportation issues and opportunities, developing a purpose and need statement, and identifying a set of strategies addressing the purpose need. Phase 2 is underway, and it evaluates the phase 1 strategies and will recommend a reduced set of multimodal alternatives. Phase 3 will evaluate the reduced set of alternatives and recommend a locally preferred strategy. We plan to start the 3rd phase in the next few weeks, and it's our goal to complete the entire study by early 2022. And I'm just going to quickly check. I don't see any questions in there. So at this point, I'm going to ask Marissa to provide us an update on our engagement efforts.
Right, thank you, Warren. So good morning, everyone. This is Marissa Espino. I'm Principal Community Relations Specialist. We wanted to briefly share our public engagement efforts from these last few months and what is to come in early 2022. In June, we kicked off our 2nd phase of public outreach, seeking feedback on the draft transportation strategies, which is what we're going to be going over today with you. We received more than 1,700 online and telephone surveys and conducted a telephone town hall and stakeholder and elected officials roundtables. We had up to 350 callers attend the telephone town hall, which also included a Spanish simulcast. In addition, we have posted 19 social media posts and ads, received close to 3,000 web views on our study webpage, and received more than 530 geofencing ad clicks, which are the targeted pop-up ads that are displayed on mobile devices. The online survey and social media posts were presented in multiple languages, including Spanish, Vietnamese, Mandarin, and Korean. We'll be posting the survey data. Oh, and I just realized, Jared, can you advance the slide, please? Thank you. So yeah, we'll be posting the survey data and outreach report on our study website later this month. In early 2022, we'll be conducting a final outreach campaign to seek public feedback on the draft multimodal alternatives. Similar to our past campaigns, we will conduct a final online survey in multiple languages, hold a stakeholder and electeds roundtable, and we'll very likely be coming back to you again in a special meeting so that we can receive your feedback. And then hold a public webinar and promote the online survey via social media, blogs, and e-blasts. That concludes my slide. Warren, I'll hand it back over to you.
Great, thank you, Marissa. And again, thank everybody for adding their information into the chat. I was just able to scan that while Marissa was giving you the update on the public engagement. So I appreciate that. And shout out to one of our board members, our OCTA board members that are online today. And thanks for being here. So with that, I'll jump right into the next slide, Jared. To establish transportation issues and opportunities for the study area, we evaluated existing, that is prior to the pandemic, and 2045 conditions if no improvements were made. Looking first at the automobile travel mode, we have identified several key issues. Recurring congestion on highways, but with distinct variation between weekdays, weekends, and throughout the year, and local arterials experience congestion as well. Looking at transit, the relatively low density land use patterns in South County make accessibility by transit challenging. As a result, transit service operates with less frequency as demand is low. Shifting to active transportation, despite a robust biking and walking network, critical gaps in the network remain. Additionally, the roadway network, topography, and long distances between land uses limits the viability of active transportation for many routine trips. Safety is also a concern, especially when cyclists or pedestrians need to negotiate fast-moving traffic. Travel demand management, or TDM, looks at ways to reduce vehicle trips, especially during peak periods. We've all become near experts with remote work and virtual meetings. These types of strategies are especially important for South County, given the long distances commonly traveled and the limited transit options. Slide 9, please. The purpose and needs statement builds on the transportation issues and opportunities and feedback received during the first phase of public outreach. Namely, the identified needs in the blue boxes include making alternatives to driving, like transit, bicycling, and walking, more convenient and accessible, decreasing the overall number of trips, and primarily vehicle trips, made each day and especially during peak periods, protecting the environment and preserving our transportation infrastructure in a state of good repair, and adapting to new transportation technologies and services. For each study need, several purposes which respond to the needs have been identified. The purpose and needs statement is used to develop and evaluate strategies and alternatives considered in the study. I also want to highlight that a key underlying study goal is to enhance equity and quality of life. Now that you've had an opportunity to hear the purpose and needs statement, we want to hear from you, and Marissa will lead you through the first poll. Next slide, please.
All right, thank you, Warren. So we are going to ask you a question here, and Jared is going to bring up an interactive poll so that you can actually pick here yourself, but I'll read through it for you and then give you a moment to read it yourself and make your choice. So which study best addresses our transportation challenges? Considering the purpose and need statement on the previous slide, which of the study needs are most important for addressing the transportation challenges in South Orange County? For this one, you would just choose one. So first one is making transit, bicycling, and walking more convenient and accessible. The second is decreasing the overall number of vehicle trips made each day. Third is protecting the environment and preserving our transportation infrastructure. And fourth is adapting to new transportation technologies and services. I know we have a fairly big group today, so we will give it a couple minutes. Jared will let me know when we get close to to a number here.
Perfect, and we are about 30 right now, so we'll just give it another minute to try to get closer.
Okay, thank you.
And we do have a couple questions coming in on the Q&A as well.
Perfect.
All right, and it looks like we have about stopped here, so I'm going to go ahead and end the poll.
Thank you. All right, we'll take a look at the results, and then Warren, if I can get your help addressing these questions, we can do that too. But let me just quickly go over these results first. So it looks like the most popular answer was adapting to new transportation technologies and services. I know here in the Q&A, Lucy Dunn actually asked if we could define what the new transportation technologies and services are, maybe give some examples. So that would be good. And then it looks like, though, before we do that, we had a tie between the decreasing the overall number of vehicle trips made each day with protecting the environment and preserving our transportation infrastructure. So those are kind of our top three. Very interesting. So Warren, I'll let you kind of address these questions. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we can go with Lucy Dunn's question first. So the new technologies and services tends to be fairly broad. So back, if we compare it to the 2008 study, I think I kind of mentioned this early on, Waze wasn't even really a technology that, we think not that long ago, we didn't even have cell phones that we could keep in our pockets, let alone the ability of both for navigation, but real-time traffic. So that's not really necessarily new, but how that technology is being applied more robustly. So what we're thinking more on the new and emerging are like the e-bikes that we saw significant growth over COVID, especially in South County. But kind of the more further along would be something like connected and autonomous vehicles, which are starting, continue to be on a kind of more of a pilot basis, not really any wide scale deployment yet, but that kind of spectrum, as well as emerging things that we haven't even seen yet. One of the things that could be a potential is like the flying taxis, which seem very far-fetched right now, but who knows? That's why we update studies like this over the long run. I will come back to Charles Gibson in just a second. David Mann asked, are we limited to one choice? We are for the convenience of this survey, but they're not necessarily a single choice. It's just for the purpose of having this discussion. And in order to have it a manageable size, we grouped things through this, and that really the purpose and need statement, looking at alternatives, especially alternatives to driving alone, it kind of ends up being an everything other than driving alone. So that's why transit was included in biking and walking. To Charles Gibson's question on how is economic development and support of economic opportunities considered in these, mobility is a critical, both mobility and accessibility are critical components to economic development. If you're not able to get your workers or goods in a reasonable time to your customers or your employees to show up to work on time, those are huge repercussions to that. So that's why we have that kind of underlying perspective of quality of life, which we see as comprehensive. The quality of life is being able to also have the economic means to maintain a good quality of life. So that's kind of critical in that component. So and are you going to discuss assumptions like population growth, impact COVID-19 on bus? So William's question in there, we are to some extent, I don't know that we're going to go too much on that because we're looking out to 2045, and I'll kind of reference this at various points throughout. We are looking at kind of some of the near-term response to this COVID-19 pandemic, but it's more about what the vision is for the transportation system in South County, looking out 25 years. So it's how we respond to COVID and the emerging conditions. Clearly, transit was already on a decline before COVID, and then COVID hit, and transit really dropped down. We're starting to recover, but how long will it be till we have pre-pandemic ridership levels? Those are things that we're going to continue to be looking at, and it's actually the subject of other efforts by OCTA. We're doing a bus restructuring study that's more directly responding to this. This is more about creating the vision for where we see, what are the needs and what is the vision that South County has over the next 25 years. So I think I've got those. Great. Marissa, other things you wanted to raise?
I think we're good. Oh, it looks like we just got another one. David Mann clearly discussed how remote working has and will decrease need for transportation in the next 25 years.
Yeah, that's, if we have any researchers at any of the universities, this is a hot topic. How much will remote work continue into the future? I think had we not seen the Delta variant, I've already been back at the office pretty consistently. We had another group that was supposed to be coming in a couple of weeks, and that, a lot of businesses were in that, post Labor Day, everyone's going to be back in the office. And, remote work would be kind of a lesser part of our regular schedules. And you know, this is an office that we're able to do that. Our bus operators can't work remotely, and in a lot of retail, that's not really feasible to, you know, when you have a customer facing aspect. You know, clearly it will be, but you know, we don't, that's not all super transparent what that future is going to be, but we clearly see that as part of it. And that's also some of the strategies that we should engage with, is how do we make that viable for a lot of different industries and be part of the solution. We don't see it as a single solution, but it's definitely part of that. So thanks.
Okay, that looks like all the questions for now.
Oh, you're muted, Marissa.
Oh. You can't hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, good. It doesn't show that I'm unmuted, so I apologize if I was in and out. So, okay, that looks like all the questions for now. Again, feel free to continue to work through the Q&A. If someone wants to speak up as well, just raise your hand and we'll make sure that you can make any comments that way or ask any questions. We will have another poll question, another opportunity absolutely for questions and answers throughout. So Jared, let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. Thank you.
Okay. So my audio went out. I thought you were muted. Oh. So, okay, small technical glitch, but I think we've got it figured. You can hear me okay?
Yes.
Great, thanks. Thanks for carrying that. Hopefully it wasn't too much dead air. Great. This slide provides examples of strategies that are being evaluated on their ability to address the purpose and need statement. These strategies span from addressing bicycle and pedestrian safety improvements to establishing mobility hubs that improve last mile connections between transit services and major activity centers. Likewise, strategies to get more use out of existing roadway capacity through existing and emerging technologies are being considered. Finally, we've seen dramatic changes in traffic through the course of the pandemic. Strategies that support continued remote work, but also position us for emerging technology, might also be considered. This could entail infrastructure that also supports connected and autonomous vehicles. The next few slides go a bit deeper into several illustrative examples of strategies we are evaluating for their ability to address the purpose and need statement. Slide 12, please. In this example, we're looking at opportunities to shift more future short distance trips to active transportation, such as walking and biking. Similar logic can also be applied to strategies like neighborhood electric vehicles. Supporting roadway network changes may include reallocating road space as demonstrated in the lower left. The map on the lower right highlights areas with higher concentration of short trips. Using our baseline scenario, around 11% of 2045 trips within the study area are walking and biking. When using a under 3 mile threshold for potential active transportation trips, there's the upward potential to capture up to 40% of all trips in South County by active transportation. Now, the idea is not necessarily to have everybody walking and biking for everything, but it's, you know, is there an opportunity to enhance the connectivity to transit, or maybe there are some more routine trips for which walking or biking, especially if you can improve the travel conditions for walking and biking, that they can capture a greater share. So slide 13, please. And hopefully you're all familiar with the OC Flex pilot project that's operating in Laguna Niguel, Mission Viejo area right now, and Aliso Viejo. We're looking at some potential expansion areas for that on-demand microtransit service. We're assuming that the current service that is operating in Aliso Viejo, Laguna Niguel, Mission Viejo would continue, and new conceptual areas throughout the study area, all the way from San Clemente through San Juan and Dana Point, and then all the way up through Newport and Costa Mesa. And you can see a number of different districts going along the I-5 corridor and provide kind of connectivity to there. So that would be both the opportunity for potentially local trips within those zones, but also connections to transit and major activity centers. Go to slide 14, please. Also wanted to acknowledge that we're incorporating other ongoing and related planning efforts. On the left, you can see the Freeway bus rapid transit service concepts that were included in the OCTA Transit Master Plan and were further evaluated in a recent study. Likewise, on the right, we're looking at opportunities associated with the Metrolink efforts to improve rail service throughout Southern California. Slide 15, please. We already hit on this a little bit with the remote work as one element of a transportation demand management strategy. But what this slide tries to do is look at some return on investment from different TDM strategies that we're looking at in this study. And it's important to note that most TDM strategies can be complementary to other efforts, whether it's bus, rail, and active transportation, or even in the case of like express lanes, the carpool formations are really good complementary efforts there. Slide 16, please. And it's not just active transportation and transit. This slide provides the final illustrative example of strategies that we're looking at. And this includes both non-capacity operational improvements, like the signal synchronization program that we have through OCTA, as well as both operational and spot capacity improvements to address congestion hotspots. Slide 17, please. This slide illustrates how we're evaluating strategies. We have bundled the strategies into several groups, as shown in green, which will be compared to the no build and the future baseline, which are shown in blue. The intent is to see how well each strategy bundle addresses the purpose and need on its own. These findings will be used to create a menu of effective strategies for consideration in developing the multimodal alternatives, which are shown in orange. The focus of the recently completed round of public engagement was moving from the strategy bundles to the multimodal alternatives. This reduced set of alternatives will be brought to the OCTA board for consideration as we shift to phase 3 of the study. Now it's time for our second poll. Marissa?
So Warren, I think, so I see a few questions under the
Okay.
Q&A. Maybe we'll
Great.
address those first.
Sure. Okay, so let me take a look at there. For consideration, happy to share my white paper on the concept, marrying climate change goals, reducing vehicle miles travel, increase. Yes, please. Thanks for sharing the link. I don't. Does everyone can see the Q&A?
They should be able to, if they click on the Q&A icon, they should be able to see the same thing that we are.
Great. So Lucy Dunn's created or not only shared a link that's we'll take a look at. It's interesting. There's UCLA had done some work with SCAG, the Southern California Association of Governments, on decline in transit ridership. And one of the big, what they called the smoking gun issue was from that was the primarily transit dependent riders on transit had shifted away and bought cars when cars were cheaper and had by and large left transit. And so one of the solutions that was offered was if non-transit riders, which we typically call discretionary riders, took transit once every 2 weeks, you'd basically regain the transit losses that we've seen kind of over the last decade. So I think Lucy's suggestion in here is kind of right in line with professors at UCLA that are looking at this. So thanks. That's a great link. And has Ladera Ranch and Rancho Mission Viejo been considered for expanded microtransit? If not, why? Actually, there is, and I believe there's an existing program with Rancho Mission Viejo, and I saw that we do have a representative from Rancho Mission Viejo on the line. I think that may be able to add some more on there. But yeah, I mean, that's definitely some of the ideas is with some of the microtransit is how we provide connectivity to areas that have kind of the least access to regular fixed route transit. And so that is part of the idea here. I'm moving on to Martin Welk. Yeah, I don't know. There was a question about would it be more affordable to widen sidewalks for bikes? We have hiking trails where hikers share the trail with bikes. Some of the challenge can be is vehicle code treats bikes as vehicles, and so depending on local ordinance on whether cyclists are allowed to use sidewalks, it's typically done at a jurisdictional level on whether they're allowed. And there have been examples like Santa Clarita up in LA County where they'll actually have bike lanes that are associated with sidewalk. But I think there isn't a one size fits all solution in here. So I think that could definitely be a solution in a lot of cases. How does the study address the safety of mixed cars and bike lanes? So it's more about the vision, but that is an important concept of how do we ensure safety? And there's been a lot of discussion throughout the region about something like that's called Vision Zero, which is the goal of achieving no traffic deaths. And so that kind of mixing of walking and biking, or biking and cars, it's particularly a challenge in South County where you have a lot of arterials at a very high speed. And so, we have a lot of facilities that do have bike lanes. But if the vehicle speed is typically 60 miles an hour, a lot of cyclists are not going to feel comfortable riding their bike on there. And so then how do we address that? There are some strategies that work, like protected bike lanes, but there's also legislation in process that would allow cities more discretion on setting speed limits too. So there's kind of multiple ways of addressing some of those safety issues. Okay, so I see two more questions here. Any consideration to enhance, make it safer biking and walking past on higher speed roads? I think I just looked at that. So yeah, and one of the other things that OCTA does, and it's not exclusive to OCTA, but it's definitely we try to do in partnership with schools, is the opportunities to look at safe routes to schools. And areas where we're likely to see a high density of pedestrian traffic. And how do we make sure that those kiddos get to school safely? I remember walking my daughter to school, and crossing Alicia. That was that'd be pretty scary to have her do on her own. And so I definitely see that. And then yeah, so we see. Thanks, Mike, for providing the details on the Ranch Ride Shuttle, which is RMV. and looks like it was a OCTA grant that helped support that as well. So thanks for sharing that. And then have we explored the idea of? Yeah, no, that's electrification. I think on that I think we had a question early on about new and emerging technology, and I didn't note anything at the time, but you know, the transition of the vehicle fleet from predominantly internal combustion engine today to largely electric or fuel cell, or definitely all zero emission, especially you know, if the governor's executive order continues to be in place that you know, no new internal combustion engines sold in California, I think after 2035, if I'm remembering my dates correctly. Having electric propulsion will be a big deal. State has also mandated that our largely compressed natural gas bus fleet converts to zero emissions. So OCTA is well on its way to doing that transition to either a combination of fuel cell vehicles, hydrogen fuel cell, and electric buses. So you know, how we figure out the propulsion on there will be some of the issues. I know some of those, we're not really looking at the external power on there, but I know on the freight side, there has been some efforts to look at that. And I think Siemens has kind of been the lead on some of the work on there, but OCT hasn't really been looking at that as much, but there is kind of opportunity to partner with others on that, and we'll see how the freight sector emerges on some of those issues. Yes, yeah, absolutely. Charles added that the importance of crossing guards. You know, a lot of times you know, it doesn't always have to be the big capital expenditures to address issues. You know, a lot of times it can be much less capital intensive, you know, actually getting crossing guards out there, you know, which a lot of times they're volunteer, and you know, thank goodness for those people that are able to devote their time for doing that. And you know, that was always one of the highlights of my day walking my daughter to school, is being able to chat with the crossing guard. So yeah, thanks for all those comments. So. And then I think Marissa, I think you're up on slide, what are we, 18?
Yes. Okay, so here's our second polling question. Jared will bring up the interactive one here in a second. Okay, a little bit longer here, but so considering the strategies that listed prior, which two strategies are most important for you and your community, your membership and whatnot? So the first one is emphasizing investment on rail and transit to improve service, frequency, and reliability. Investing in road and freeway operational improvements to minimize delays and improve travel efficiency. Third is enhancing active transportation and provide more opportunities for non-auto travel. Next is investing in programs aimed at changing travel behaviors and reducing overall travel demand. Next is using roadway pricing to manage demand. And finally, investing in new technologies and improvements focused on protecting the environment and adapting to changing travel behaviors. We'll give you all a few moments to review this and make your top two selection.
And Marissa, while these are coming in, you did get a question in the chat.
Oh, yes. Warren, we do have one from Martin Welk.
Yeah, I was just trying to double check that we still have the results of that study on our website. So OCTA did do some study work on looking at that connections, and I think that's the one that you're referring to. And let me see if I still have the results on that. You know, this is one of those things that I think kind of goes back a little bit to looking at the emerging technology. When we had completed that study, it really wasn't deemed feasible, you know, that it would be possible to build that tunnel, but the traffic benefits versus the costs basically put it on the back burner, that it wasn't a project that was moving forward. But, you know, if technology is such that those types of projects, those tunnel projects, and I think the, I can't remember the name of the Elon Musk effort with the tunnels. You know, there's been a couple of test projects. I know there's one operating in Las Vegas area. And I believe San Bernardino is looking at something to connect to the Ontario airport. As those kind of options continue to improve, you know, some tunnel connections may be a possibility in the future. Right now, it's not on any plans to move forward, but you know, we'll see that.
Okay, so Jared, do we have our results? Can we bring those up?
Perfect. Yep, I will go ahead and end the poll and pull up the results.
Okay, what do we have here? So 64% is a pretty dominant number here. So investing in road and freeway operational improvements to minimize delays and improve travel efficiency. Definitely was the top pick. We had another tie in second place with emphasizing investment on rail and transit to improve service, frequency, and reliability, and enhancing active transportation and provide more opportunities for non-auto travel. I do see some questions, so maybe we'll address those first, but I did want to just see if anybody wanted to comment on maybe why they picked their top choice, if it was hard to pick a top choice, if they actually felt there were several strategies that were important, but we can go ahead and address these questions first. And I do see, William, the entitled question that was below, I believe, was just a typo. That's to be, I don't think that second question was supposed to be there. So sorry for the confusion on that. Oh, let's see. And so other questions, though, maybe we don't have that many. I'm kind of trying to read through these really quick. So the anonymous attendee who mentioned the, you know, should have the what's important and what we completely disagree with. Noted, thank you. We were just trying, we could do that. We have done it in the past where we do the most important, maybe the least important. We were just trying to streamline the questions a little bit, but thank you for your input on that. And then David, man, I don't know if you wanted to expand on your comment about Hyperloop, if you wanted to speak up or put it in the Q&A.
I think that might, I think it was responding to my,
oh, okay.
my lack of neurological
Oh, okay.
neurons connecting there. So I think Hyperloop's one of the technologies firms that are doing some of the connectivity. So definitely an emergent technology that could be in there. I'm seeing there was also a tunnel option that was associated closer with the 91, and I'm not sure if this is the exact same one that was referenced in the question, but there is some under the completed studies on the OCTA website that you can still access. So just kind of closing the loop on that previous question.
Okay.
And I see there's a comment on why no one choosing paying to drive, which is interesting because you know, during traffic conditions, we are all in certain ways agreeing to pay to drive. We're just paying in time. We're not necessarily paying monetarily, and that's why with express lanes, or sometimes they're called hot lanes, high occupancy toll lanes, sometimes having that choice to pay for a higher level of service, a faster moving lane, sometimes there is there is demonstrated demand for being able to buy access to a higher level service, which we clearly see. Anyone who travels the 91 sees the benefit of having those lanes and having the ability to do that. When it's more comprehensive, the state's been looking at a road user charge program, which I know is not just in solely on mobility. It's also about to transition from the gas tax based system to a mileage based, which goes along with the transition from internal combustion engines, where a lot of your revenue is based off of sale of gasoline, to when you have a future where almost everyone's not using or not purchasing gasoline, how are you going to continue to pay for transportation infrastructure? So, and as we have a former California Transportation Commissioner on the line, who is definitely a foremost expert on here, we could definitely do a deep dive into that. So if want to go any further into there, but great, thanks.
All right, thank you. And to try to stay within our hour, maybe we'll move on to the next slide. Have another couple questions. They're not poll questions, it's just kind of an open discussion. Considering any of the strategies discussed here today, in blue for reference on this slide, are there any others that come to mind? Which are most important to your organization or business, et cetera? What are your community's top priorities that would help achieve the study's purpose and need, shown in orange here? So if anybody cares to comment in the Q&A or raise their hand, we'd love to hear from you. And if not, that's okay too. We'll just take another beat here and see if there's any comments. We have a question from David Mann. There's a couple more coming up.
So, so I see the first question: what are the long-term study of placing tracks in South Orange County along I-5? So I assume that that's moving from the more beachfront and moving it inland. Now that could be something that would be important to consider if sea level rise continues. There's some trade-offs, some pretty significant trade-offs there. One is potentially avoiding the risks that may come with sea level rise, and we've definitely seen a lot of erosion in the Capo Beach area, in Dana Point. So there's the protection of the assets, the rail assets there. But then potentially there's some pretty significant costs to moving those tracks. You may have heard some of the discussion that's going on in San Diego with the Bluffs and Del Mar, and SANDAG, that's the San Diego Association of Governments, is really looking at opportunities to move the tracks inland there. They've had a number of stoppages because of work on the bluffs to kind of shore up the rail line, and so they're kind of in more of a critical state than us. But that's one of the key elements that we're doing both in this study, plus a lot of the efforts that OCTA is doing overall, is looking at climate change risk, whether it's wildfire, sea level rise, additional high heat days. How do we plan for those? How do we enhance our resiliency so that our transportation system doesn't go down? How do we respond to hazards? So that those are important things to look at. I think it's definitely something that we'll be looking at. So I think that's there. Any consideration to use flood channel for bike transport, and that definitely has been used pretty extensively. We're undergoing a study right now. One of my colleagues that's more focused on active transportation, looking at opportunities for kind of a similar, like the OC loop in North County, actually looking at a series, so they're more like a Central County loop, as well as a South County loop, and then a cross-county connector. So there'd definitely be opportunities to kind of look at facilities there. There's even been some interesting things where, like in LA County on the Arroyo Verdugo or the Arroyo Seco, I think that's the right waterway. They actually have the bike path that's down at the base of the channel, which is clearly a problem whenever you have flooding. So definitely something where it requires human intervention to make sure that's closed off when there's high water mark. So, and then I see another question from Lucy. For a small sample and states maintenance clear that there's a that's yeah, and I think that's sometimes always a challenge. When you have state mandates and you have a lot of differences of opinions. So yeah, I mean that's point well made. The risk will just come, just when and how long. Great point. And it's how do you do the trade-offs from those risks, and how are you properly planning for it, so that we minimize the risks to life and property, with the emphasis on life, and do the trade-off on those investments. So I hope my slide up front was pretty clear on the assumptions about extending the 241 toll road south. The assumption is that it ends at Oso Parkway, the current terminus. That was the agreement that was reached in spring of 2020 with TCA, OCTA, and Caltrans, that the toll road doesn't extend south of Oso Parkway, or the 241. Obviously the 73 extends to I-5, but there's no planned lengthening of that facility. There are spot widenings within the existing right-of-way for all the TCA facilities. Based on we need all the above strategy, maybe good combination approaches as population goes. Yeah, this definitely is, and I think that's probably not just for this study, but I think for a lot of planning efforts going forward, it's definitely going to be the kitchen sink approach, where it takes all kinds of strategies to address our mobility and accessibility needs. It's not going to be a single silver bullet anymore. We'll be able to see the studies for moving tracks to I-5. Absolutely, when when those are undertaken. OCTA is very clear about using a robust public engagement effort. We try to be transparent in all of our studies, and anything like that would necessarily require robust public outreach to go through that, and clearly it would entail a significant amount of environmental analysis, and that all is required to be public. Yeah, and then I think Lucy Dunn put some icing on the cake on the 241 discussion there. Great.
Okay, very good. So Warren, I think we can just close out the presentation at this point. If we move to the next slide.
Great.
Thank you, everybody, for all of your great questions too. It was perfect.
I
All right,
agree.
here we
I
go.
agree. Thank you, Marissa. These performance measures were developed based on the purpose and need statement and will be used for determining the relative trade-offs between each strategy bundle approach. And so those, remember, those were the green boxes that I showed you, seemed like quite a few slides ago, but I think it was only like 3 slides. Next slide, please, Jared. Over the next several weeks, we will continue to engage with stakeholders on the results of the strategy screening and ways to combine the strategies into multimodal alternatives that address the purpose and need. Results of the screening and the proposed set of multimodal alternatives, along with public and partner input, will then be presented to the OCTA board as we pivot to phase 3. We're aiming to complete the study by early next year with a consensus-based, locally preferred multimodal strategy. This study is looking out to the year 2045 and beyond. With that in mind, the study will focus on long-term needs rather than near-term recovery from the pandemic. Slide 22, please. I want to thank you all for participating today and sharing your insights. An update on SOCMITs will be coming to the OCTA board soon as we pivot toward the final phase of the study. During that final phase, we will conduct a 3rd round of outreach, and we would be happy to come back to a future Economic Coalition meeting. Thank you. And if there are not any more questions, I'd like to hand it off to Brian, or is it Barbara or Brian? Looks like Brian.
Yeah, I'll take it. Thank you so much. Thank you, Warren. Thank you, Marissa. And behind the scenes, thank you, Jared, for giving us that presentation. The South Orange County Economic Coalition is obviously very supportive of a good infrastructure for the region. It's important to the economic growth and economic sustainability of our businesses in South Orange County. I'd like to also thank everybody who has been on this webinar. We appreciate your input. We appreciate your participation. Please let your friends and family know also that we are recording this session. So if they want to see it, they can go to the South Orange County Economic Coalition website or social media channels where we'll have it posted. Hopefully later today. We're going to try and get it up as quickly as we possibly can. So again, Marissa, Warren, and Jared, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining us here today and giving us this presentation on the multimodal study that OCTA is doing for South Orange County. And thank you all for joining us. Have a good day. Bye-bye.